Hi everyone, welcome to Get Bit Outdoors, your informative and how-to podcast with product reviews for hunting, shooting, and fishing. Primarily the focus will be Pacific Northwest based with an emphasis on walleye waters, techniques, the Pacific Northwest walleye circuit, big game hunting, and archery. Bringing you all the information you need to get bit by your outdoor passion. So come on in and get bit. On this episode of Get Bit Outdoors, we talked to Bob Loomis from Macks Lures. Gives us a little history about where the company started, some of their best lures, color combinations, and pretty much all of their components that they have. So come on and give us a listen. So I'd like to welcome in Bob Loomis from Macks Lures. Welcome to Get Bit Outdoors podcast.
Thank you.
So give us a little history on Macks Lures, how it got started.
Well, Macks Lure right now is, they've been in business for 47 years, and they actually started over out of Riggins, Idaho, and the original owner, Ray, or the McPherson family, were the ones that actually started it, and that, they originally came up with the wedding ring lure, which they actually fished trout in streams with. And that wedding ring lure was originally designed with like a flow orange beads and the flow fluorescent or flow chartreuse beads, and the products work fantastic as a casting tool on small creeks, small streams, things like that for the trout. But they soon realized that trolling it actually worked really well. So it's kind of evolved into more of a trolling application or a trolling product, and people kind of overlook that it was actually originated fishing little creeks and streams with split shot.
Nice.
So the McPhersons ended up moving out of from Riggins over to Leavenworth over here in north central Washington, and soon got into a lot of other product lines, a number of different types of configurations on the wedding ring spinners, larger stuff for lake trout, for steelhead, for salmon, things of that nature, and getting into other types of products, jigs, marabou jigs, bucktails, a number of different product lines. And then about, I'm going to say about 9 or 10 years ago, I guess it's longer than that. Man, I'm getting old. It's about 11 years ago, 12 years ago. Jesus. They ended up buying a patent from a gentleman that had started a product line called the Smile Blade. And the Smile Blade was a ultralight mylar inline spinner that was designed, and that ultra lightweight mylar spinner soon became known as a product that worked extremely well for early in the season, early mid-season, different types of fisheries where slow trolling was a predominant part of acquiring fish.
Sure.
So they came out with a couple different lines of product lines that kind of worked real well for the slow trolling applications. Obviously one of them was the fishing for walleye, and it soon kind of evolved over the last 7-8 years. Since I got involved, we really started marketing and pushing heavy and manufacturing different types of products geared around those different types of fisheries, crawler harness setups, a lot of the slow death hooks, things where that Smile Blade really shined.
Now, with your Smile Blade and the slow death, is that something you guys got into a partnership as far as acquiring the hooks? Now, do you guys use the Mustad, or which one is it that you?
Well, we use the original mustads.
Okay.
The first product line that we came out with was the original Slow Death hooks, which were an extremely fine wire hook, and trying to sell those up here in the Pacific Northwest. Our fisheries, on the average, our walleye are quite a bit larger than what they have back in the Midwest.
Sure.
The average, they'll go out and target 12 to 14 inch fish, where we throw most 14-inch fish away.
Right. Unless you're up at Kettle Falls.
It's just one of those things that different areas, because of the amount of feed and the types of feed that we've got some tremendous fisheries out here. So trying to sell those ultra lightweight fine wire hooks worked really well back in the Midwest. But we just didn't sell a lot of them out here because a lot of people lost fish on them.
Right.
And that's we came out with another hook called the Spindrift hook that VMC came out with. It was their lookalike to a Slow Death hook, and that one actually had a swivel on the back of it and worked tremendously well. It was a heavier shanked hook, therefore a lot of people jumped on it immediately, and that hook has sold really well up here in the Pacific Northwest.
Question for you on that one.
About a year and a half ago, Mustad came out with a little bit heavier shanked hook and an exaggerated bend in it called the Super Slow Death hook, and that one has worked really well out here so far. Yeah,
that's been a good one. A question for you on the Spindrift hook. And,
yes.
Maybe it's just me. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong with it, but it seems like I'm missing a lot of hook sets with that one for some reason. I don't know if it's because the point isn't bent out right, or have you heard that at all?
I haven't. But, let's face it, everybody's got a little bit different style of fishing.
Sure.
How they fish, how they holding onto your rods, how you set the hook, how you do things. A lot of people do a lot of different things, and some things just don't work for them. And it's something that, maybe you're trolling too slow. Maybe you're trolling too fast. Maybe, I don't know. I have not seemed to have had or heard that issue.
Okay. Well, what I've been doing with it is I've been taking the point and actually bending it to the side, so it gets out a little bit to the side.
Right.
And that seems to increase the hook sets on them. So
bending it out to the side works really well because it really makes it twist a lot more.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it's nice with those is you don't have to worry about your line twisting as bad because it has that swivel behind that eye. Right. So,
yeah, it's a neat setup. It really is.
Now, going back to those Slow Death, it's funny, the True Turns way back in the day, that was the original that had that bend in it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
you're right. We still had product up till about 2 or 3 years ago that had one of those original True Turn hooks on it, and that was the original Slow Death type product.
Yeah, it was. Well, it was kind of, I guess you could say, ahead of its time back then.
Yes, yeah. If they would have exaggerated that bend a little bit more, it would have really taken off, I think.
Yeah.
And
it was a little bit thinner wire, so.
Yes, yeah.
So now, as far as your guys' Slow Death setups, have you noticed that's been probably maybe one of your number one sellers?
Well, that it's like anything else. You bring out a new product, and guys fish it. Myself, some of the guys in our local group, some of our pro staff people, you get out and you start showing on Facebook, talking to people. Oh my God, look at this, look what's happened. The whole social media thing obviously has really changed how everybody does business. And when that whole thing changed, how it changed, it really creates a fervor on a new product line.
Sure. Well, it's the latest and greatest.
Yeah, exactly. So to answer your question, yes, since we brought it out this year, it has been absolutely fantastic, and been one of our bigger sellers. But the old mainstays, the typical crawler harnesses, the double whammy walleye. You know, they sell huge numbers day in and day out.
Sure.
Just chug along, and it's something neat to see. The people getting excited and fishing those different types of setups, and everybody, like I said, everybody's got their own little different setup that they like. Whether it's fishing the spindrift, whether it's fishing a super slow death, or fishing a crawler harness setup. And it's kind of funny to see how, like I said, that social media thing, I'll go up to Banks tomorrow and absolutely mollyhawk fish and post a couple pictures and what I was using, and on Tuesday morning after the 4th, we'll get a whole bunch of phone calls on the thing. Everybody's got to have them.
Yeah.
So
that's how it works. I mean, that's good for a company like you guys, because that social media is just an outlet for, advertisement, and it's got to be just so beneficial for you.
Oh, it is. It is. Absolutely. We've got some tremendous people in here that are really good at it. Things have gone extremely well, and we're having fun with it. That's for sure.
Sure. So now I don't know if it's something that you can talk about yet, but you guys did acquire another company.
Yes.
So
yeah, we just acquired Shasta Tackle.
Okay, give us some background on that.
Shasta Tackle was created down in Northern California by a gentleman by the name of Gary Morales, and Gary was a guide, and of course was making some different products for himself that worked extremely well, and it just kind of evolved into a business. He fished predominantly trout and kokanee, and that's really where the biggest portion of the business is in that trout kokanee trolling type products.
Gotcha. Now your guys' you're a national company, or international even, but you're reaching out to everybody as far as all across the country. So I'm guessing that it's not just obviously walleye based, like you said. You're talking about trout, salmon, kokanee.
Sure.
What are you noticing that you get a trend on as far as that tackle goes?
That's the neat thing about the fishing industry. I've been in this industry for 34 years, and a large portion of it was on the fishing rod side, but it's still the same. Montana gets a late winter, and therefore they don't get a decent spring, and you don't sell nearly as much product. You go back to the Midwest. In the Midwest, it warms up early. Sales go through the roof earlier in the year, and you sell more product throughout the year. So it's really predominantly dictated on fisheries specific.
Sure.
I mean, literally across the United States and Canada and everywhere else. What's going on that year. You always have your mainstay, or your main, everybody's got to have stuff, regardless of having a cold, wet spring and not being able to fish quite as much. They're still going to buy a certain amount of product and use certain types of product, but you've got windows, and that window can open or close, according to that weather dependency or fisheries dependency, whether you could go salmon fishing or whether you could go fish walleye in a particular lake. So, everything's kind of out of our hands as far as, pure numbers wise of what you're selling.
Right.
I mean, it's all pretty dependent on the run of fish and your weather.
Now, do you notice that there's more, I don't want to say more, but let's say out of the Northwest, are you getting more business from that? Or is it pretty much just spread across the states?
No, our biggest area absolutely is out here in the western states, because we're known as a trout kokanee trolling product. The thing that has really developed and is growing tremendously is the walleye side for us, and because of the products and the products that we're fishing. It's stuff that actually catches fish. It's not a fisherman catching tool.
Sure.
So,
well, and there's no doubt about that. I mean, the Macks Lure line, I mean, what you guys have come up with, and not just the lures themselves, but the components as well. It's so nice to be able to go and buy the components if you want to change something, if you want to make your own.
Yep.
It's so beneficial for even just the everyday fisherman, not just the tournament anglers, but to be able to do that. It gives you such a variety.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is we don't, as well as I do, you're a tournament angler. You don't buy stuff off the shelf. You buy all the components and put it together the way that you want it. But you use the components.
Right.
Which basically, looks like something that I put together. Now, the monofilament I use is fantastic. The hooks that I use are fantastic. But a tournament fisherman, hardcore fisherman, is always going to put his own little twist on something.
Right.
Therefore, they're not the bulk of the individuals that are actually out there buying the product. It's the average Joe who wants to catch as many fish as Lonnie did today, and he saw what he was using, and he can go down and pick it up, over at Cooley Playland or wherever. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the nice thing about it, is it's so widespread as far as what you have availability wise. You go to store and there's always a Macks Lure section, and it makes it good for like I said, the everyday fisherman when they're going in and they're looking for a lure. Okay, well, today they're biting on chartreuse, so they're going to go in and buy 4 chartreuse slow deaths.
Yeah.
But now going back to what you use in your lures, you said the monofilament. What's let's say the standard pound test for the line on that?
Well, everything's a little bit different. We're selling spinners. I'm not selling a hardwire spinner, so I'm selling a monofilament spinner, a trolling tool. With that in mind, I have to overbuild things a little bit. So where the average Joe, the average person putting together the old original fine wire slow death hooks, they would generally run 8-pound tests. I run 12. It still rotates just as good, especially when you're using good swivels and stuff. Still rotates very, very well, but a person doesn't want to lose a $3 lure.
Yeah.
Therefore, I have to overbuild it a little bit.
Very true. Now, you guys are just using the monofilament. You're not using a fluorocarbon?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I couldn't remember if that was the case or not.
Yes. Yeah. Just using monofilament, non-UV monofilament. It's one thing that a lot of people don't pay attention to is there's a lot of monofilaments that are manufactured out there. They're actually very high UV.
Yeah. Yeah, and it makes a difference. Oh,
you bet it does.
That stuff will glow. You get it in the right conditions, and it's like a beacon down there.
Yep, absolutely.
So, what was the idea as far as Macks moving over to Washington? Do you know?
I do not. I do not know why Vern ended up moving the company over here to begin with. I don't honestly know one way or another.
Okay.
I just know that they had a resort over in Idaho, there out of Riggins, and the fishing lure started taking off big enough that he needed to spend more time on it. So they sold the resort and moved over here to Leavenworth. So, and I'm not sure exactly why.
Well, what's the benefits of being there in Washington right now? As far as Wenatchee goes, I mean, that's where you guys are based out of.
Well, bottom line is I moved back here from southwest Washington just because of the fact I wanted to be back on this side of the mountains.
Sure.
I originally grew up in Chelan, so
Well,
I wanted to be back over here. But as far as Macks goes, you could move it just about anywhere in the western states and still get away with a little bit. But the fact remains is, being as old as we are, as round as long as we have, you've got those certain relationships built into the whole infrastructure of the fishing industry out here. So it's kind of nice being right where we're at here in Wenatchee.
well, and it's a excuse me, it's a good location too, because you've got the Columbia River right there. You're centrally located in, really what is considered, at least in my opinion, some of the best walleye fisheries that we have. I mean, you go an hour and a half either direction,
absolutely. You're absolutely correct. It's one of those things that where we're located, in an hour and 45 minutes, I can be up on Roosevelt fishing trophy kokanee. I can go to Banks Lake and fish some of the best walleye fishing in the world. I can go down on the Columbia River and fish some of the best walleye fishing in the world. I can, we've got sockeye right here in the backyard. We've got kokanee. You can throw rocks at all the kokanee lakes around here.
Yeah.
So we're really centrally located for what we do.
I've got some friends that live up there at Lincoln, and they're really big into the kokanee. And it's amazing because, you didn't really, and it's not that you didn't hear about it as much, but it's just really become popular, it seems like, over the last 10 years.
The kokanee fishery in the fishing industry overall, in really the western states, but predominantly the West Coast, California, Oregon, Washington, has been the largest faction within the whole fishing industry, the largest growing faction within the fishing industry for about the last 8-9 years.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And then they're pulling some great fish out of there too. I think saw some pictures where they were pulling in 4 or 5 pounders.
Yeah, they're catching some 4 and 5 pound fish right now. In fact, there was one that was they had a picture on Facebook, and if it was what they said it was absolutely over a state record.
Really? I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, it was a little kid last Sunday. They posted it on Monday morning, and the little kid had a 27-inch kokanee, is what they said it was.
Wow.
And if it was 27 inches, it was hard to tell with him holding it. It was a good fish, regardless. But if it was 27 inches, it was over the state record. That is amazing. Yeah.
So, kind of switching gears a little bit and talking about the Columbia as far as walleye go, it's amazing to see some of the weights that are coming in from, let's say, the Umatilla, Tri-Cities area, as far as,
yes.
I mean, it's just incredible the size of the walleye they're getting.
Those fisheries have been really good over the years, and they cycle. All of these fisheries cycle. You end up losing some forage base, therefore the fish get a little bit smaller, or they get overpopulated and become smaller. You have less fish and more forage base, and all of a sudden you've got bigger fish.
Right.
So, and they will continue to go through these cycles in different areas, but that whole Tri-Cities area down through, clear down to Biggs, is and always has been a fantastic fishery for big fish.
Sure. Yeah, it's funny because you go down there with the expectations now that if you don't come away with at least 2 over 10 pounds, it was a bad day.
Yeah, exactly. You tell somebody that from the Midwest, and they look at you like you've got, a growth on your forehead or
right.
something.
And it's funny how those go in cycles too, because you look at Moses Lake here, even let's say 7-8 years ago, and it was just chock full of the 12 to 14 inchers, and it was hard to pull anything out any larger than that.
Yeah.
You'd have to work for them because those little guys were so aggressive.
Sure.
But we're
sure.
starting to see the swing in the other direction now,
Yep.
which is good.
Yep.
You know, you go out and your average size is 17 to 18.
Yep.
So.
Absolutely. You know, and I think, you know, a lot of it, especially at Moses Lake, where they went through that whole clean water program that they did over the last few years, you know, it's cleaned that thing up to a point that you're starting to get, you're seeing those cycle changes where those fish are becoming a little bit bigger. I think all of that has to do with that. You know, it's all ecology.
Sure.
Everything relies on something else, and you know, when you take one thing away, it's going to affect something else down the road. So whatever they did was right.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny you say that, because years past you would go out even in early spring, they turn the water on, we got water flowing, and the water, yeah, it was cleaner, but you still had a visibility of only maybe 2 or 3 feet.
Correct.
Now you're going out, and you go out in early spring when they turn the water on, and you can see bottom at 10 feet.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, you know, that changes that whole forage base, and obviously what's going on right now has worked very, very well.
Yeah, well, it's good to see. That's for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
So talking about your walleye gear, you got any new products on the horizon?
You know, we really don't have anything right now. You know, we're always working on something, but if I told you, I'd have to kill you then. But
that's the second time I've heard that today.
Great. No, we're always working on something a little bit new, a little bit different, working on creating something that, you know, that's one thing that I made a little joke about it earlier. You know, a lot of people, or I should say a lot of manufacturers bring out products just to bring out a product. And that's one thing that we will not do, is just bring out a product. We absolutely believe that the product has to stand on its own, and if it can't catch as many or more fish than anything else, then it's not worth bringing out.
Right. Now,
it's got to be unique.
Do you guys go to ICAST at all?
You know, we go down and walk and see a few people, manufacturers, things like that we buy some of our raw materials from, but we don't go down and have a booth at it.
Gotcha. Okay. Was just curious. So some of the old standbys you guys have, obviously, you know, your slow death, spin drift, those are, let's say, relatively new. But when you start looking at some of the old standbys, you know, the walleye pop, that's got to be
the walleye pop is, I got to tell you, the walleye pop is so underutilized. You need to take some of those blue walleye pops and go trout fishing. It moves like a crankbait in the water, back and forth, because of the way it's designed with the flotation and everything. They work fantastic for everything, and they still work, as you stated, you know, very, very well for the walleye fisheries.
Well, yeah, and you look at some of the people that maybe you're just getting into walleye. You know, if you look at some of the forums on Washington Lakes or Northwest Walleye, and the first thing they're talking about is, you know, going out and getting some walleye pops.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And it's been a proven lure. I mean, you can't deny that for sure.
No, not at all. The other one that the walleye pop, you know, has always been, it was probably more predominantly pushed because of the fact of the different colors and things that you could put together with it. But the one that has kind of been overlooked, even though I still sell a lot of product with it, is the cha-cha crawler rigs, the ones with the 2 pill floats on it.
Yeah.
You know, those things are fantastic because you can cover just about any base under the sun as far as creating different types of forage-based colors with those different pill floats. And, man, they work fantastic, especially, you know, a little bit later in the year when you're fishing weed line edges and weedy areas where that flotation really helps that thing move through the water. Right.
Well, kind of moving on to the smile blades, and I don't know if, I'm sure somebody's probably already told you about this, but what we like to do, or what I've done, is I take 2 smile blades. I run a little bit bigger one, let's say towards the hooks, with a couple beads, and then a smaller smile blade in front of it.
Right.
And so go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it works fantastic because you can get contrasting colors and
Yes.
create more of forage-based colors by doing that. It works very, very well.
Yeah, that's what we started doing here about a year and a half ago. And it was funny because you get on some lakes where you have maybe a little bit less visibility, especially in potholes during the summer where you get that algae and
Right.
light penetration doesn't go in so well. And you can get those contrasting colors. You can run a blue and a silver or a gold and a chartreuse, and you can really see that pop in the water.
Absolutely. No, you're right. That's something that a lot of people overlook that. It's something that you can do. You can do so many different things with it. As far as creating different colors and creating, as I stated, a forage base or creating a high UV part that can be seen in real colored water.
Sure, and even the people that go out and they buy the prepackaged smile blades, the slow death. I mean, you can pick up another packet of the components, the smile blades,
Yep.
And add that to the front of it, and it's amazing what it'll do.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
So I got to move on to the rock jig. Let's say over the last few years, I've been using the purple and the black.
Yeah.
And you get up into shallow water in the weeds, and that is a killer for walleye. Not,
you brought up the rock dancers, which is our bucktail jig, and as I stated earlier, I've been in this industry for 34 years, and I've been fortunate enough to fish a lot of different places around the world. And if I had to pick one lure to proficiently catch everything from West Coast to East Coast, saltwater included, it's either going to be a bucktail jig or a jigging spoon.
Sure.
One or the other. I mean, they're a toss-up because there's certain applications that either one of them work good for. But you can proficiently catch virtually anything on a bucktail jig.
well, yeah, and the versatility, like you're talking about, you can either bulk it up with a soft plastic, or what I've been doing is I've been actually running a gulp minnow behind it, give it just a little bit bigger profile, and it actually adds a little bit of buoyancy to it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, talk about that. As far as the design, as far as that jig goes.
That whole thing, it just amazes me. I lived down in Southwest Washington for 25 years and dyed-in-the-wool steelhead salmon fisherman and fished them. So many different methods of fishing, whether you're fishing suspended bait, back trolling lures, you name it. And I get back over here to north central Washington. One of the number one selling parts for winter steelhead fishing is a bucktail jig. And I'm looking at that going, huh? Well, I'm telling you what, it works fantastic. Absolutely works fantastic under a float for steelhead.
There you go.
And originally that was the intent, what they were using it for. And as I stated, it's kind of been the mainstay for the rock dancer jig, but it's one of those things that, just exactly what you said, it works fantastic for walleye fishing.
Yeah.
Or,
Well, I think a lot of people overlook that.
Yeah. Oh, they do. They really do. Like it works fantastic for steelhead under a jig. It works fantastic for walleye. It works fantastic for rainbows. You just go down the list. It's just a matter of getting the right colors. Things that match for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, there was some people I was talking to that were fishing up on Lake Pateras for the steelhead, and that's what they were doing. They were running that rock dancer underneath a float,
Right.
And just drifting it down the shoreline. And they had great success with it.
Yeah, real good.
Oh, good. So, what's your involvement as far as the community goes? Kids fishing. Do you have anything where you guys have anything set up for that?
Well, we obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, we support a tremendous amount of programs. We sponsor the the trout pond down here at the Wenatchee Sportsman's show. We do a tremendous amount with a number of different groups throughout the state, and I should say states. But one of the bigger programs that we actually have really got involved in is the CCA group up here, which is Coastal Conservation Association. So that's been one of our bigger endeavors. That Coastal Conservation Association was started back in the early '80s down in Houston, Texas, to try to help bring back the redfish sea trout. They got decimated from the commercial fishermen that were gill netting down there. So this group has been around, as I stated, for 35 years, and we ended up bringing them up here because of the fact of the pretty much the same issue. We've got all these ESA listed fish on the Columbia River, and we still have gill nets in the Columbia River.
Right.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. So.
Well, there's no doubt about that. I know the company Macks Lures themselves. You're really involved with the tournament as well. I mean, It seems like every tournament you go to, there's a banner that has Macks Lures. So that's good to see.
Well, we like to try to support those people that are supporting us. I mean, that's the name of the game. Obviously, getting your name out there, getting people using the product. I love it when you start telling me about the different ways that you're fishing product that most people don't think about. I mean, that's fantastic. That's one of the greatest forms of a compliment that you can get.
Well, and that's the thing about it too, is just experimenting. I mean, you get so many different components and lures and whatnot, and that's where it's actually fun. You start tinkering with stuff and trying to figure out what's going to work.
The typical fisherman.
Yeah.
you got to modify it a little bit.
Yeah, it always seems that way.
Yeah.
So, going back to, let's say, the first time walleye anglers, what would you recommend for them to go pick up that they're going to have success with?
I'm sorry, Lonnie. Can you say that again?
Sure. The first time anglers, if you had somebody come up, hey, I'm new getting into walleye, what would you recommend for them to go pick up?
Well, the easy thing to do, I shouldn't say easy. I would say that the best thing that you could do is to get a walleye pop and do a little bit of trolling, figuring out, how that whole crawler harness setup, how that whole thing fishes. When you start talking about having to thread a night crawler on a slow death hook, it's a little difficult and a little overwhelming because you don't, if you're going out there cold, you don't know whether it's working correctly, you don't know if it's spinning right, you're not sure. But a crawler harness setup where you just, put a night crawler on there and drop her down to the bottom and pull a spinner, it's a basic setup, and it'd be one of the easiest ways to really get into it.
Sure. You go back to the slow death. I know that there's a lot of people like to run a whole crawler on there, which, it's not bad if you have small crawlers, but you get anything, over a 4-inch crawler and it doesn't want to spin like it should. And that's right, where you start losing that impact of the lure and what it's designed to do.
Correct.
And it's easy for people just to slap a worm on it and think it's working okay, but that's really good recommendation, just to get out, get the double whammy, the wally pop, and you can throw the crawler on there. What would you recommend for colors for somebody?
That is a really tough one.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that every area is a little bit different. I will say that your golds and blacks, your chartreuses, those are kind of mainstays out here in our areas. Those types of colors are going to work because they will emulate a number of different types of forage bases, your perch patterns, your shad patterns, your mud minnow patterns, sculpin patterns. So you're getting close to, you know, a number of different forage bases that really want to trigger fish.
Sure. You know, the other one too that a lot of people overlook are the fact that the walleye really do feed on the crawdads.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
You know,
that golden black pattern, you know, at certain times of the year works really well, like early spring when the crawdads first start coming out.
Sure. Yeah, and you can get that burnt orange with the gold.
Mm-hmm.
You get that down on the water, and it emulates that color scheme, especially early in the spring.
Yes.
But yeah, that's a good one. So how about somebody that's getting into making their own lures? Because Macks obviously sells a ton of components.
Yes. Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
There again, it depends on what you're fishing, where you're going, you know, what you're trying to achieve. The one thing that people do not really pay attention to is forage base. Most people don't even think about it. But what are these fish feeding on? What time of year is it? You know, where am I going to be fishing? Am I going to be fishing along a weed line late in the summer, or am I going to be fishing out in the middle in 70 feet of water? Well, it depends on the food. That's where your fish are going to be, especially when you're talking about a predator like a walleye.
Right.
You know, they're going to hang where the easiest, most amount of food is. So what are they feeding on? Well, they're feeding on small perch, or they're feeding on mud minnows, or, you know, it just depends. So, you know, you really need to know where you're going fishing, and once you know that you're going to go to a specific lake, then find out what that forage base is.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the Macks, is the fact that there's so many components that you can choose from. You've got all of your blades, your smile blades, your beads, your floats. I mean, it's an incredible amount of product. But you can go and you can get, let's say, a small tackle box full of components, and you can make 20 different lures, 20 different, you know what I mean, as far as color schemes and
absolutely.
So that's what I was thinking as far as a first time somebody that's going out to getting lure components.
Yeah. No, the bad thing is, you know, I've looked at that over the years of trying to sell a component box. The unfortunate thing is, though, is that every time you come up with something, somebody wants something a little bit different there. Well, no, I really need that other color. You can't come up with something that fits everybody's wants and needs and desires.
Right.
So it's really tough. So just selling the components themselves made a lot more sense.
Well, I think it was a gold mine for you guys, because there's so many people that like to build their own, or just tweak what you have already.
Sure.
So I thought that was a really good idea. Well, Bob, I appreciate your time coming on with me, talking about it. You know, where can people find you?
As far as
online,
the factory, online at mackslure.com. We've got a Facebook site. Go to Macks Lure. Our 800 number here at the shop is 800-525-8737. You know, we're in most retailers around here. As far as getting people up online, you know, I had mentioned Cooley Playland and Big Wallies, you know, up on banks, or Mike Meesberg's place over at Potholes, or Tri-State. You know, the people that are in the know, they've got the right components and the right products in their area. So
yeah, no question about it. Definitely. Okay, Bob. Well, I appreciate you joining us, and you know, we look forward to hopefully being able to talk to you again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Lonnie.
Okay, thank you.